cross that we must bear. And must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? No, there is a cross for you. There's a cross for me. And God invites us to carry the cross, knowing that we don't do it with our own strength and power. The same power that took Jesus through Calvary, the same power that took all of these listed in the Hall of Faith through their adversity and allowed them even to die, being thankful to know that they could share in the hardship of their master. It's the same power that will carry us. You know, when you look at the story of the seals, and the question was asked, how long? Lord, how long must we wait? And the answer came back, you got to wait like your brothers. Okay? There are others who are going to follow the struggles that you are experiencing. So here we are reading about the adversities in the Old Testament. In Revelation, in the seals, when the question was asked how long, their reference point was those in the Dark Ages. And those who had experienced adversity and had hardship for their stand for Jesus Christ. And the focus was the question being asked by us who are living in the end time, how much longer must we wait? Right? And spoken through those who had died during the Dark Ages, symbolically raising their question. How much longer, Lord, before you come? He says, okay, rest in your graves because you, me and you, some others are going to come later and we're going to have our share of adversity too, and all of us are going to be redeemed together. Right? And so Revelation does not give us a picture of a smooth sailing in the end time. It gives us a picture of God's people under adversity. Right? But the message that is overwhelming is that despite the adversity and the hardship and all that is against us, we are overcomers. Because Jesus has already defeated the devil. Right? We are already victors. But in this last conflict between good and evil, between Christ and Satan, there is another phase of Jacob's trouble that must be experienced by God's people. Right? So missionaries. How many missionaries do you have in the house? Okay, it sounds good to me. It sounds good to me. We're all missionaries, right? We have been given a mission, have we not? Yes. And what is our mission? Go in all the world and do what? Teach. Yeah. Baptize. Yes. Right. Teach again. Right. So we are missionaries. And where's our primary mission field? Hey. And where are you? You're in Bermuda, right? What part of Bermuda are you in?
I'm in Devonshire.
You're in Devonshire. Okay. Paget. So we all have a designated territory, right? And if God so moves us out of our territory, we carry mission there too. Yep. And if we are called and take advantage of an opportunity to leave Bermuda and go to another place across the seas, right, and cross culture, we will take the mission there. Right? And when we go with a message, right? What's the message?
Jesus is coming again.
Jesus is coming again. What's the message? Jesus says. I like that. What's the message?
All are welcome.
All are welcome. Yeah. What's the message?
Heaven is your home.
Right? Heaven is. It sounds good. Yeah. What's the message? Third angel's message. Hey, three angels' message. That's a very special, unique, time-driven message, right? And God's end-time people carry the everlasting gospel, the good news, the message that has been preached all along, but then add to it and color all that is given through the eyes of the uniqueness of a message given to us in time. And what made our message so distinctive?
Christ's death on the cross.
Christ's death on the cross, ultimately, but did that only happen in our experience as the remnant church?
No.
Okay, so the message of the gospel goes back to where? Go back to Eden. So what was unique about us in the end time? Okay, now was the Ten Commandments kept at any other period other than the remnant church? What about the Sabbath? How old has Sabbath keeping been? Okay, so when did we begin? When did we begin as a remnant church? 1844. Okay, so the question is, what makes us unique? What message do we bring to the table that was not here prior to us? Second coming of Christ. Now, second coming of Christ. Were we the first to teach that Jesus is coming a second time?
No.
How far back is the second coming dated? Okay?
That Eden.
Yeah?
Well, it wasn't said specifically, but
Yeah?
the heel of the woman would be. I
Okay.
guess that was connected.
Anyone read Jude of anybody who talked about the coming? Take a look at there. Yeah. Right? Yeah, let's see which verse it is.
So that was news that would carry the gospel, put it to reference to the end time throughout the world.
Okay, so there's an end time message throughout the world. Yep, that's a part of it. I think I had a. Here we are.
So,
Let's see if we got
but
something
wasn't
in
it
Jude
from
that
the
can help
beginning
us.
when God had a plan of salvation, I guess.
Let's see what we can find there. Look at in Jude 9, I think. Let's see.
Ye Michael of the archangel,
Okay, let's see what we got here.
to dispute about the body of Moses.
Yeah,
Does
not quite that.
Against him, a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee as not.
Okay, not that one. Let's see what we have here. Egypt. See if we can find anything about Enoch in Jude. 14. What does it say?
And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied to thee, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints.
Okay. What is that? What was that message?
That was second.
Second coming, right? His coming with 10,000 of his saints. Right? Has that happened yet? No. So, and when did Enoch live? 1844? Okay, it was before there. So, second coming is not new to us. Right? What's new to the Advent, the remnant church? The investigative judgment. Notice now, when you see Revelation 14, 6 and 7, it says the hour of his judgment.
It's come.
And what is that tense?
It's present.
Present tense, right? Was judgment always present tense? No. Right? You remember in the days of Paul, he says God will set aside a day in the which he will judge the world. Right? And what tense would that be? Future. So if in Paul's day it was future, but in our day it's present, then it makes a difference. Okay, so the very timing that judgment began initiated a very special event which brought about a special message. Okay, so what event was it? What took place and what year did it take place? 1844, and what took place?
That's when Christ left the earth and went to the heavens,
Into the most
the most holy place.
Did he leave the earth at that time?
No, but we on here, Sister White, Pastor Miller, and that's when he was going through the cornfield.
Okay.
God gave him the vision, and
Yeah.
he's leaving the earth to go to the heavenly sanctuary to start his judging.
I thought he left the earth after his resurrection.
Well, yeah. his
So
spirit,
what
I'm talking about.
Okay, so where did he leave? What did he leave? Yes? Okay. And when on the earthly sanctuary, what happens when you move from the holy to the most holy?
You're presenting.
In the earthly system. When the priest left the holy to the most holy, what was happening there? So this, hey?
It's presenting. Planning the temple.
When did it happen?
It was about our sins.
1844.
No, we're going earthly now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the earthly sanctuary. When the priest left the holy and went into the most holy, when did he do that?
After having cleansed the sin.
Yes, on the Day of Atonement.
Day of Atonement. How often?
Just once a year.
Once a year. And what was the purpose of this?
That's the sins are sins. The sins for everybody.
Okay, the sins,
For the entire community.
community, what's happening to it? Intercession for them. What was he doing every day? Because there was killing of lambs, there were sacrifices. Sins were moving where? Every day. Where were sins going?
Going up to heaven for Christ to forgive us.
In the earthly sanctuary.
In the earthly
Yeah. Why would you need a Day of Atonement?
Because we needed to be cleansed.
You need to be cleansed. So if you're clean, you need to be cleansed, that means that you were dirty.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? So what was being cleansed?
Our sins. And
The Day of Atonement was the cleansing of the temple, the sanctuary. Okay?
Yes.
So if the sanctuary was being cleansed, then the sanctuary had been contaminated.
the sanctuary
Yes?
illustrating as our bodies.
Exactly. It was illustrating, pointing to our bodies, but in a very literal sense for Israel, their sins were contaminating the temple every day. Every day, their sins are being transferred from themselves to the sanctuary. And so the sanctuary is like housing their sins, and through a symbolic act once a year, the entire sanctuary is being cleaned. And so God is now removing sin from the camp of Israel through a process of judgment. And so once a year, the priests went into the most holy place to perform the ceremony that symbolically removed all the sins from the camp, gave everybody a brand new, fresh start. New year begins, new walk with God. Okay? And so this whole imagery now is captured in prophetic reality.
That's
When we talk about the heavenly sanctuary now needing to be cleansed.
the two goats.
Yep.
One goat came in when they gave all the sins, and the priest put all the sins on the goat.
Yep.
He set the goat
Uh-huh.
out, and
Right.
then the other goat he kept.
Okay, so there are two goats. One goat represented
Christ
and the other one represented
sin.
sin. Okay? So Jesus pays the ultimate price by his death for our salvation. But the penalty of sin is ultimate death and removal from of those who are sinful. Right? So the scapegoat representing Satan now is the ultimate one who must bear the full penalty and destruction that is related to sin. Okay? So in the earthly imagery now, we see this once a year day of a judgment and the removal of sin from the camp. In the antitypical day of judgment, which is now the antitype, and now we're talking about Jesus himself, who died how many times? Once. All right? So he leaves us, he goes to heaven, he intercedes for us, and then according to the 2300-day year prophecy, unto 2300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So now he must engage a process of the cleansing. And that cleansing is a process of judgment. Okay? So we'll come back to it at another point. But our message, you cannot go across culture to provide a missionary service if you don't know what your message is.
Right.
Yeah? The mission is to go.
Yes.
Is to go everywhere.
Yeah.
Cross culture is to go globally.
Yes.
But we must go with a message.
Right.
What good is it to say, well, here I am, and say, well, what's the message? Oh, I don't know. All I know, I'm supposed to come.
That's like the one that went to David to give him the information.
Yes.
His son died.
You're right.
When the first one got there, he didn't know what he had to say.
No, didn't
The
know.
last one brought the message.
That's it. That's it. You got to go for message.
Yeah.
Right? And our message must be clear in our own mind.
Yes.
And certainly the message begins with Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
He is the everlasting gospel. That's what we carry.
Right.
Right? But the message is not simply and not only Jesus who came the first time. It is Jesus who is coming a second time. It is Jesus who has shifted from a ministry of simple intercession to a ministry of judgment. And when that began, 1844, in heaven, God raised up a people on earth to tell the world what Jesus is doing and what we must do in preparation to meet him.
We need to
All right?
take the right message.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we are end-time people. Our distinctiveness is identified in time, and that longest time prophecy being the 2300-day year, which now gives 1844 a very significant place within our message.
Right.
And it colors all our other interpretation.
Yeah.
So our interpretation of the Sabbath and the commandments take on new meaning now.
Yes.
Because the very law that they are contained in is the basis of judgment.
Right.
and is the standard of God's justice, His character, His love. And so we are calling people back to worshiping the true God, obeying Him as Lord. We accept Him as Savior. That's a gift. We accept Him as Lord. That's obedience.
Yes.
That's commitment to all what He teaches us. All right? So this now, the three angels' messages of Revelation 14, 6 to 12 summarize all that we believe and that drives our mission. So our 28 fundamental beliefs now, they are an expression and an extension of that summary of the Revelation 14, 6 to 12. Okay? And so as we experience it and feel it, and by the way, you look back at our early history, and what gave significance to our message was the prophetic understanding. So it's the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation that colors, that clothes, that gives meaning to all of our 28 fundamentals. Right. So without the understanding of our prophetic presence, we are shortchanged in understanding our message. Right. Okay? So we cannot lose the big picture of who we are, what we are about, where we must go, and what message we must take with us. Yes. Okay? So there is a mission, there's a message, and we have methods.
Right.
Okay?
That ties in with the sermon that Pastor Llewellyn was telling us yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, people now want to know what's going to happen
Method.
when they're dead. That right now is on the top of everybody's list. Everybody's dying. Where are they going?
Yeah.
How did they get there? They're already in heaven.
Yeah.
Some pastors teach them that they're already in heaven.
Yeah.
And he was drawing an illustration. He said that this person went and he was in church preaching, and he asked him where his family was, right? And so the pastor turns around and said, "I see him up there, sitting up there." He was a carpenter, building a boat or it was something he was doing. And then he said a few minutes later, he told the other ones, "Oh, I saw him walking up the alley. Where is he? He's dead. Where is he?" He saw him walking up the alley and he's dead. Yeah. How can you see a dead person?
Right. Yeah.
So you need to tell them, a lot of them tell the people what they want to hear.
That's right. That's right.
Not what is true, and that's what we must do.
That's right, we must. And our next course in July, July 9 and 16, is Bible Doctrines and Biblical Interpretation. So we're going to take a new look at our fundamental beliefs and also the principles that govern how we interpret Scripture. Okay, so July 9 and 16, that's our next course.
I might miss that because my granddaughter's from London. I might go there on a trip.
Okay.
But anyhow, what I wanted to ask was, is there any way we can get a study going where we could take Scripture at a time and just go through all the... See, this is what we do. We skip Scripture here and there and everywhere, and we don't get the full picture of each Scripture.
Well, that's July. That's July. That's July. We're coming back in July for that.
Oh, I learned that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's where we're going to start talking about that. Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Attorney, fundamental belief. Why is it that when somebody gets baptized, instead of them reading the whole 20, I remember they used to do that before. Right. When they got baptized, they read all of them.
Sure.
Now today, they
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. That's July 1990. Right. But let me just say something here on that. Yeah, it's really a question of mission. Mission is what drives everything that we do. Okay? Now, when you have, and it actually is a convenience as well, when we expose someone to the basics of what God requires of them, they may not know everything in detail, but they know enough to say, I'm willing and ready to make a commitment here. Okay? And so the summary view of that is captured in the shorter forms of the vows. When we gave the longer version, even sometimes we gave it with a thought that maybe if we say it and you answer it, then we have actually given you everything. But you not necessarily got it. No. But we satisfy ourselves that we gave it to you. Right?
Can I answer his question?
But still, the student who's getting baptized should be taught all this here.
That's my point.
Yes.
That's my point. The extent to which they really understand all the details,
Yeah.
it comes in time.
Right.
Right? Because we operated on a philosophy coming along is that we must teach you everything before you're baptized. So sometimes you're there 3 months, 6 months, and some people even 12 months before we can baptize, because we got to make sure that you know everything.
Yeah.
Right? Because the thinking is, if you get it all, then you're ready for the kingdom.
Right.
That's not.
As a checklist.
Yeah.
There's a checklist, legalistic way of
When I
approach.
came back,
Yeah.
By that time, the spirit's going. They don't want to be baptized.
Exactly.
But,
You see, so we miss it. We miss it
Yeah.
when we think that if we give you all the right answers, then you're in the kingdom, right? And now you even feel you're better off than everybody else because you got 100%, right? But your character is less than desirable. Okay, and so the reality that we've come to accept is that all of those checklists, they are not the transforming power. Okay, Jesus saves.
Right.
Right? There is a commitment to believe that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the remnant church. And you accept by faith that you want to be a member of that.
Yeah.
Okay? You may not even understand all the details, but you have enough to say, I'm in on this one. I'm ready to take it by faith. And so we say, let's seal it.
Yeah.
And let's continue the journey. So when we have the shortened form, even more so if it's a mass baptism and a great congregation, what have you, it's more practical. It's more realistic. Because some people make their decision right at the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
And they don't have all the details.
No, they don't.
But they are willing to take a step in faith.
Yeah.
So rather than ask them to answer all these detailed questions on things they haven't really looked at, you are asking them to accept in principle a commitment to a direction and based on Jesus being accepted as Savior and Lord and the belief of the body that this church is delivering that final message. And you're willing to live by it as it unfolds. That's the thinking. That's the
That
shift.
would be a good introduction to when you do that, because a lot of people do have that question, and they think of it in a negative way. But
Yeah.
when you're explaining, it gives very much a foundation of what our biblical approach should be when people are wanting that conversion experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we haven't changed our beliefs. Yeah, that doesn't say we've changed our beliefs, but it's saying we have shifted our thinking.
Right.
And we have moved more into a relationship with Jesus than a relationship with do's and don'ts in our thinking in terms of the lifestyle of a Christian.
Pastor, we
All the
had-
new converts
Yeah,
should take this class and find out all the classes, what classes are teaching.
yes,
New converts, they need to take these classes.
yes, we believe this needs to be a part of our church culture. We're talking about cross culture, but the church has its own culture.
Right.
And this needs to be a part of the culture of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Bermuda and worldwide. Because we must disciple. We're not just baptizing, but new converts must be discipled.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Pastor.
Millard?
The illustration that you quoted last week, the Ethiopian,
Yes.
made it quite clear
Uh-huh.
that you don't need a whole list of
That's right. Yeah.
rules
Yeah.
to be baptized.
Right.
And that was called cross-cultural also.
Exactly. Definitely it was. It certainly was.
So was the thief on the cross.
There you go. And he wasn't even baptized. Yeah, we didn't even ask him the three.
We
Yeah.
had baptism yesterday in
Yeah.
St. George's, and they told us before they even said gave her to repeat.
Yeah.
They started the whole fundamentals with her.
Yes.
Before,
Yeah.
along with the other subjects that they were studying.
Uh-huh.
So, and the pastor explained
Right.
that she knows about them. So
That's
they're
right.
taking the short version because she's already studied and
That's right.
understands
That's
the
right.
long version.
That's right. That's
So
right.
that's why, I know that's why
Yeah.
they used it yesterday in
Yeah.
church. They used it 3.
Sure. I had a baptism yesterday at Jobson's Cove, right? And here was a couple. They actually are planning to be married this month. They wanted to renew their vows. right? They are baptized, and there's another, they were guest workers here, right? But so they are baptized members, but they wanted to renew their vows. And we used the 3, the summary 3. So it was for convenience and it's summary, all right? They knew, but they just wanted this refresher. Okay, this has been an extended devotional, yeah, right? And where did we go from? We came from Hebrews 11 that listed a number of examples of persons who've experienced adversity in their walk from God. And they were all from the Old Testament times. And neither of them received the ultimate reward. And then the writer of the Hebrews is telling us that they are waiting for the rest of us, and no one's going before the other.
That's
Right? We can all go up together. Right? So, those who followed them in the Dark Ages and experienced martyrdom and abuse because of their determination to follow God, they too now have joined the others, and they're resting. And now, as we move right to the end, there is the final phase of adversity that God's people will experience because of our belief in the end-time message. Right? And we too now, along with those of former years, will be caught up to meet Jesus in peace. Okay? So the whole message of missions and cross-cultural message is a great work, is a great message, but it is not one that is without a cross. But it's okay. We are not alone. We are in the company of many who before us who were faithful even till death. Right? Yes. Final question. Yeah.
Just a question. You said mission, method, and what else?
Message. Yeah. Yeah. Mission, message, and method. Which is most important out of those?
The message.
The message. Okay? It's the message. And then what would be the second one? Mission. Right? And then why would the third one be third?
Because you gotta have a message to get when you go for the mission, to have a message.
Yeah. So the method. Yeah.
You gotta have a method.
You have a method.
Have a mission.
Okay. Method varies. Okay, now here's an important part of mission also, because sometimes we confuse method and message. For example, if I preached with a wooden pulpit, and then I decided to put up a glass pulpit, where is the problem?
There's no problem.
But do we sometimes make it a problem?
Yes.
Why do we make it a problem?
Because it's legalistic.
No, but just let's use the language of message, method, and
We get mixed up.
yeah, out of message, mission, and method. The pulpit is a question of what? Method. Okay? And since it is in third place of priority, then if mission demands that we have a different method to reach a different audience, then should we not want to change the method? Yeah? So the method is not sacred.
But then,
why
people
would
do
you
get caught up.
Right.
People do get caught up because
Yeah.
it's legalistic, because they only think it's only one way and a
That's
certain
right.
way, and,
That's the
you know,
way it's
because
gotta
that's
be.
all that it's been.
Exactly,
And
but
tradition.
exactly. But what we want you to begin to think about, put it in this category. You told me that message is number one. You told me that mission is number two.
Right.
And you told me that method is number three. If the changing of a pulpit is method, then that's why it is relatively insignificant.
Right.
Okay? So that's the language.
Right.
We are about mission. To carry a message. To reach a people. And what are the method that is reasonable, that is not contrary to God's teaching, is acceptable. Yeah? And what might be acceptable in one place may not be acceptable in another.
Right.
You get it? Okay, so why method is really relatively insignificant, its significance is attached to where it is being employed and by whom. You see, so you have to know your audience. And since we are dealing with cross culture, we have to respect differences. And even in a local church, where there are people who have so much association with a certain method, and they haven't been to cross-cultural evangelism yet. Yeah? Right? So you have to respect them. You can't just say, because I know that this issue of a pulpit is nothing, I'm going to just move it. No, you cannot do that. Right? Because their minds are still associating that method with the message. They haven't been freed to see the difference between the two, and they are doing the best they can with what they have. So we have to respect them. But at least we understand where they are and understand where we are, and we work patiently with them. I want to give you a principle here. 1 Corinthians chapter 8. And by the way, this does come into one of our presentations for today on principles. But we're bringing it in right now because we're talking about it. 1 Corinthians chapter 8 is a chapter that deals with whether or not Christians should eat certain foods that were known to be offered to idols. All right? And as Paul develops the arguments there in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, he concludes by saying, listen, if meat eating isn't cause my brother to stumble, I will not eat it. Now, the meat that he's talking about is meat offered to idols. The chapter is not talking about vegetarianism. That's not the issue. But it is talking about eating meats that we know were offered to idols. Okay? And he said, listen, we all know idol is nothing. And whether a meat was offered to idol or not, it has not changed the meat. No, right? So there's no difference between the substance and the value of the meat before or after it was offered to idol. So if you want to eat meat that was offered to idol, you're free to do it. That idol didn't do anything to the meat. However, in the minds of the people here, right, when that meat was offered to idols, you took on idolatry. And when I see you eating that meat, you are telling me that you are an idol worshiper. So how can you expect me to listen to you preach, Angela? And I know that you are a false worshiper. So now that's creating a problem. It's creating a problem with the mission. Right? Because you're not listening to me. And if you're not going to listen to me, how will you know the message? Right? And so since this has become a barrier between us, in order for me to fulfill mission, I must change my method. And the method is, I'm not going to eat that meat. Yeah? So the meat in and of itself is not a problem. But I don't want to cause you to stumble. Therefore, why? Because I have a mission. And I have a message to deliver. And if my mission is impeded by your confusion over my behavior, I'm okay with changing my behavior so that the message can be delivered and you can be saved. You get it? It's all about mission. So we must make adjustments along the way. Because we are cross-cultural evangelists.
Because, well, that even could make people say that's creeping and compromising
when it's not.
Right.
That's why we have to understand what's the difference between application and principle. Now, principle says that we must be modest. And we have to have appropriate dress for situations. That's a principle, right? Okay, but practice says when you're in Bermuda and you're a pastor in the pulpit, generally you must wear a tie on Sabbath morning. Now, is there anything sacred about wearing a tie on Sabbath morning? No, it is not. But culture has said that this is a dress code that is acceptable. Is that right or wrong?
No.
Is it a bad thing to have a norm? No, it's not, okay? But keep it in this category. I do this because it is acceptable dress code. And in the minds of those who have accepted the code will be better ministered to if I respect the code. If I go too far outside of the code, I am going to have all kind of bing, 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 bing going off in people's head because they say, hey, how can you be a preacher and looking like that? And that's going to affect what?
It's going to affect the message.
It's going to affect the message.
Because the mind is set on what
there you go.
on your dress.
And if the message is not being delivered, how effective am I being with my mission? You see? So there's the issue of mission and message that informs behavior. Okay? Behavior is a question of methodology. Right? Except if the behavior is in conflict with the message. Right? Now, if I started eating pork, right, because this is a good thing, it tastes sweet and what have you, and you know that I'm a Seventh-day Adventist preacher, now you got a real problem. Yeah, and I have a problem too, right? Because there's something in conflict with the message. So there could be some behavior that violates the message, but all behaviors do not violate message. Some behavior is simply a different methodology, a different form, a different cultural application. Right? So principles and application. Know the principles. How often should principles change?
It does.
Needed.
A principle is
Okay.
biblically based.
Hey?
If it's biblically based, it shouldn't change.
Okay, principles don't change.
Consistent.
Right? But application of principles change. And it is for us to make the difference between the two. What's the principle and what is the application? Is the ring of a wedding ring a principle or an application?
It's an application.
Interesting. See?
Everybody has their.
Is the wearing of a wedding band a principle or an application?
It's a principle because it signifies that you're
Exactly.
you are one.
That's right. So it is a behavior, right? A physical, visible behavior
Say that
And a norm.
and a norm that communicates a principle.
the principle.
And what is the
You're married.
principle?
You're married.
You're married. This symbolizes that I am taken. Right? And in the minds of an audience who generally understand that's what it means.
Yes.
Right? Then they're going to behave differently.
Right.
For some, that may invite them on. I like people who are married. But be that as it may, it does communicate a message. Okay? The message is not the ring. The message is what the ring symbolizes. Okay? Which makes the ring an application of a principle. Now, some people would like to say this is a principle. It's a principle, therefore, if it goes on, it's a wrong thing to do. Okay? And so we have to really talk through the practices that we have to ask ourselves which are principles and what are applications. Since principles are unchanging and applications are changing, it's important to make the difference. For some, a pulpit that is wood is a principle. And when you give me one that I can see through, then you have violated the principle and you have desecrated the church. The church is irreverent now, it's unholy, the Spirit has left. And we are dead. Yeah, you see? Because we have associated an action with a principle. Okay, so it's so important for us to process what we do, why we do it, and fine-tune how we conclude whether it is a principle or an application, whether it is a cultural norm, right, or if indeed it is a violation of a biblical teaching. Yeah, and for some, we draw our conclusion at different levels.
Right.
And that's why we have conflicts.
But then
to
see
get
with
back.
that, I think
Yeah.
that's
why it's
with the
cultural.
ring. I think it's
Yeah.
cultural because
Yeah, I think so.
before for Bermuda,
Yeah.
not with regards to some
Right.
cultures,
Uh-huh.
but so that's where it becomes questionable. But I think everyone ultimately has to choose for
Yeah.
themselves.
Right.
But I think that's solely cultural when it comes to Bermuda.
Yeah.
Because we never really that wasn't an issue.
Okay.
But how do you then differentiate when something is cultural but we want to take it on because we then have a different association? It's not because of the meaning of it, but because it's something I can now do because I'm taking it
It's
as
acceptable.
legalistic. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to really look at your motives,
Right.
your personal motives, and you have to look at what's happening. Now, we both change culture because culture always changes. We know that, right?
Yes.
Or we can be changed by culture.
Yes.
Yeah, we can be the initiator or we can be the recipient, and it happens both ways. No one is neutral in culture. Right? We are shaping and we are being shaped.
Yes.
So we are determining to what extent will we allow ourselves to be shaped, and how will we be catalysts for change, so that we are shaping
Yes.
the world around us. And let us be careful that we are shaping them in harmony with the will of God.
Yeah.
That's why we must be immersed in the Word,
Yes.
and we must be intimately connected with Jesus,
Yes.
so that the message that we carry is Christ's message and not our own.
So where did the Adventists get the idea that people shouldn't wear a wedding ring?
Oh, wow. Do
Where
you really want me to answer that?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, where did they get from? I mean, because
Yeah.
if we can wear a watch, why can't we wear a ring if
Right.
we're married?
Yeah, yeah. And in
See,
fact,
that I always had a
yeah,
problem.
where we are today, the wearing of the wedding band
Yeah.
is really personal,
Right.
and it depends on where you are.
Right.
Okay? There is no issue within the teachings of the church as to whether it is right or wrong. It is an application of a principle. And the principle of morality, of respect for marriage, of decency, and of respect in the community, these principles govern.
Yeah.
But individually we must choose. I didn't wear a wedding band. My wife doesn't wear a wedding band. When we were in Cameroon, the ladies and the deaconesses told my wife, you need to wear a wedding band.
But why?
Because here, the message,
That's right.
the message you communicate in this culture, right, is that you are a loose person
That's right.
and you are available.
That's
And so the issue is, are we so caught up into what we want to do and what we think is right and wrong that we violate the very principle of the people we are trying to reach? They are telling you that the message you are communicating to them is this. And you say, I couldn't care less about your message. I'm not going to do it. Well, why are you there? Are you not a missionary?
Right.
And is not the work of a missionary to carry the message of salvation and to use a method that can best facilitate the delivery of that message? So, if I have to change my practice of a wearing of a band or not, so that my message can be more effective, then what's the significance of saying I'm not going to wear the band? Right?
You're taking your band off.
And why not?
But then,
Why not? Okay.
But with your intro before that,
Uh-huh.
clarity of why we are thinking is so limited.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's good. But I think it's-
Okay, I want somebody to help Forrest. Forrest can't understand it, please.
It's gave the introduction.
Who can help Forrest?
You can help 'em because
Yes, please.
Your
Yeah.
method is important because the most focused emphasis is on your message. So in order to ensure you
Okay,
get the
where he
message to
is.
the people,
Where he
you
is.
are, right.
Right, I understand
So
that.
because you're adapting now to another culture, it's not hypocritical because your mission has been accomplished. So now you're going back into the culture that you know it's acceptable to do either or. And it's not infringement of worship to God. Because you've been, because now that has shared with us, the most important thing is the message. You can be able to meet the need in that culture because you're you're respecting the norms of the culture. You're not,
Of their culture, yes.
yeah.
I
So
got it, I got
it's
it.
fine
Say it
now
like a
because
Muslim. It's
because
like a
it's not
Muslim.
it's not an issue of right and wrong. Because
Didn't
again,
we
the
not-
message
Right.
and the
I got
mission
it,
has
I
been
got it.
accomplished because you're able to respect their norms, respect their culture,
Yeah.
and it's not
Go
a
Muslim.
right or wrong biblically.
Good Muslim, he'll understand it.
Okay, he understands.
I understand what he's saying.
See,
Where
if you're
he
in
was.
another country, you're
Where
good
he
Muslim.
was. Yes, I understand all that is.
That's
But
right.
didn't we not marry not with rings at one time?
But that's not in that
That's
culture.
in our
But
culture,
in
that's
that
in our
culture.
culture.
In the Adventist church?
No, no,
It's
the
in our
Adventist
culture,
church
but
vary.
in culture.
Yeah,
culture.
it's up to everybody's.
No, in some
discretion.
cultures, like you shared, there is a belief system about marriage, and that represents, that symbolizes marriage, that wedding band. So we sometimes limit it to our culture.
Okay,
In their culture, yes. In that
Yeah.
culture, yeah, I understand.
that's the issue.
I understand what it's saying.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at separating principles from application. Okay? And in order for us to be effective in cross-cultural evangelism, we must understand this difference. Right? That applications are simply symbolic expressions of an understanding to exemplify a principle. Right? Principles are abstract. But in order for principles to be known, they must be placed in concrete. The concrete are the applications. Right? Modesty is a concept. Right? Morality is a concept. But now, I have to now demonstrate. If I came to you today and I had no clothes on, what will you conclude? Oh my, I'm immodest, I've lost my mind, and yeah, this Gibbons is going. Right? Okay, so I talked to you about a theory of morality and modesty, and you just, oh yeah, I understand that. But the minute I took my clothes off, all of a sudden now it had meaning. Right? Because until there is a concrete application, you do not know what this abstract is all about. And so when we see things in concrete, those are the things that get us up. Right? Those are the things that rise our eyebrows. Right? When the pulpit is gone. They say, what happened to the pulpit?
And they need to.
I mean, it's 7 in the morning and there's no pulpit. Right? Hey, now when you see that, all the emotions begin to rise now. Language begins to be expressed because you have seen an application of a violation of a principle in your mind. However, you have not made the separation between the two. They are one and the same. So the absence of one and the presence of another has triggered in your mind a violation of a principle. When in fact it is simply a symbolic expression. Right? The symbol is nothing in and of itself. What is of value is the principle. We need to make the separation. The wedding band in one place, the absence of what, we have to decide what meaning we attach to that. So there, my wife wore a band. Came back, she doesn't wear the band. Okay? So it's not a matter of the rightness or wrongness of a band. It's about what's... I didn't tell her. No, she chose.
I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you.
Okay.
I heard what you said earlier.
Yeah.
They told her that she needed
to wear a
band.
Yes, they did.
Until you were yours too?
No, it was just the women.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would have had a harder struggle. But again, I would make the shift.
I heard what you said
Yeah,
earlier. Right?
yeah.
But I understood what you're saying.
Right.
But I know coming up in the event, we never married with rings.
Right. Which means culture changes.
That's right.
That's what we said. There's one thing as
That's the question I was asking.
Yeah. And that's the answer.
I never married with
Right. And so now that we are looking and discussing this issue, and we know that one thing that is certain about culture, it will change. Okay? The mere fact that it will change, expect it will change in the church too.
I'm sticking to what the word says.
But then again, what does the word say?
Jewelry.
But then the question is, what does the word say about jewelry?
I don't wear jewelry.
No, that's fine. But then you could choose not to.
You wear what? What?
Yes.
What is the form?
Of jewelry.
Right. So what makes you wear that one and not wear another?
Yeah,
It has a purpose, right?
Okay, you got a purpose. So you have cosmetic jewelry, right? And you have functional jewelry. This is functional, right? If I just decked it all out and just made it all hang out, it's more decorative, right? And so I have to answer to why I do it. Now, I still can't judge you, but I have to conclude that the function that is very obvious in one area may not be obvious for another, right? And you know and I know that this is fulfilling a function of time that is valued, that we agree on, right? But all of the other strippings and adornment is a little more difficult for one to justifiably declare a function that is consistent with practice, except it makes you look good. And it brings your attention to yourself. Yeah, it's very attractive. Okay, fine. Now, even the Bible talks about Lucifer, who was decked in gold. Oh, yeah. He was really looking good. And God made him that way. So God loves beauty. All right? We're not saying you don't look beautiful with all the jewelry. But what did it lead him to? It led him to a very self-centered, corrupt way of living. And the tendency of the outward attraction that tends to idolatry leads the church to say, based on the principle of modesty in dress, this is what we advocate. Right? We do not advocate decorative jewelry, right? Because of its tendency toward idolatry. You give an inch and they take a mile. Okay? So we want to be not seen as how close can I be on the outside and still in, but how close can I be with Jesus and reflect His glory. So the focus, the principles of the New Testament, let not the adorning be the outward adorning, but let it be the inward. Okay, that's a principle. You still have to apply it.
Yes.
So when you come down to the application level, people will apply it differently. So we cannot make the judgment call. Right? But individually, as close we become with Jesus, that should drive the decisions we make. And if we see people who have adopted a practice that is not quite ours, don't conclude that they are farther from the kingdom than us. No, don't go there.
You're being judgmental.
Yeah, that's judgmental. No, I'm not going there. Okay, but I'm not going to push you into hell because your dress code is different from mine. Right? But let us focus on the principles that must govern us and help us to make choices. Cross-cultural evangelism, go with a mindset that is flexible. Okay, go ahead.
How about your sister that does something in the New Testament and quote was Abraham the husband and wife? And said she had doing something the girls or something on her body.
Yeah.
I forget what was Abraham. No, this is Abraham, and she doing herself and she had lots of girls on the wife. I forget what scripture it is. I think it was Abraham's wife.
Abraham.
Okay.
She said she had doing herself in the New Testament.
Yeah, she adorned herself.
Yes, and someone and she called him Lord. That scripture.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know she wasn't getting to it. Like I had to worship myself, but she put on this pearls.
Yeah. No, I mean, we women address to attract men.
Yeah.
And men address also to be attracted to women. Yeah. So the problem of attraction is not a bad thing. Right? It's the extent to which we allow it to go. When Satan reached the point now that all that beauty was turned inward, and he began to think of himself more highly than he should, he reached the point of violating the principle of Christ first, and he began to worship himself. Right? So all of that led to idolatry. Okay, at what point will it shift? We can't say. But we don't want to go to the fine line so close that we don't know if you push me too hard I can fall on either side. No, we want to be in Christ. But we definitely do not want to judge others. Right? Teach principle.
But to me,
Teach
that's
principles.
why married people should wear a ring.
Okay,
So
now
that
when you
people
use
would know
words
they
like
were
short,
approached.
when you use words like short,
They should wear their ring so that the single man would know the women are married and the single.
And some don't even care.
I know, but when somebody wants to approach somebody,
Yeah.
they should know who to approach.
right? And
I
so
mean,
you're
it
saying
would
it'll
be
be,
nice for a man to be talking
Yeah.
over there somewhere, and then all of a sudden someone is coming up upon his wife or something.
Yeah.
So that's the way I'm looking at it.
of course. So for you, it'll be helpful.
Yeah.
It'll be helpful, right? But I want to challenge the word short. That's what I want to challenge. The word short. It's and if it's compulsory, then what happens there?
Then
Then
Everybody has to do it. So you want conformity,
right for you because
and who has made the rules for that conformity?
I have made the rules.
And are you a good judge?
Not really.
No, right? Because someone else may not apply the rules the way you want it. Right? So the conformity, the judgmental attitude, the ultimate in out, right or wrong, we have to know where that is applicable. When it comes to true, clear teachings of the Word, there is right and wrong. There's nothing else when we talk about remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Right? There's no optional day. There really is no scripture that can support an option. Right? So any tradition or practice that's in violation to that is in violation to truth. Okay? But when it comes to the wearing of a wedding band or not, give me a passage of scripture that is that declarative, that would tell you that it is right or wrong. Is there one? Right? Can we find in the teachings? No. Now there are passages that we can go to. There are passages that leads us to the application that we have made of the non-wearing of jewelry. You can look at Genesis 35, when they were moving from a state of mediocrity to a holy position. And Moses was commanded to take all the jewels off.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll look also later on when Isaiah speaks about it. Says, let not the women go with their tinkling in their feet and all the others, all list. So here's another principle here. Then if you look at Revelation and you see the true church portrayed in the natural things that God had made, chapter 12. And then you see the woman on the scarlet beast, decked in jewels and all the others. You see another visual of, hey, this just doesn't look like the way I want to look. You get a picture? Okay, but it falls short of saying if you wear that jewelry, you are the woman. It didn't say that. But it's enough to suggest where that could go. And so as a church, when we pull this all together, we say this principle of morality and this teaching of end-time message is such that we want to be distinctive as a people, and also we want it to be reflected in our dress. Therefore, this is the dress code we recommend, and that is excluding decorative jewelry. You get a picture here? And by get a picture of the difference between the principles and the applications, and the judgmental and the ultimate do's and don'ts, shoulds, should not, must not, right? The language that we use to truth and the language that we use to the application of principles of truth in practices that change from one culture to another, and from one place to another, and from different groups within a same country, and different groups of Adventists within a same country. Okay? There is room for diversity, and there is room for uniformity, but let us be careful of what is principle and what is application. Who was first? Let's go to the back, and then we'll work our way to the front.
I forget what I was going to say. I'll just tell you, the whole story, what I experienced yesterday. I work at the hospital, so I see a lot of new hires that come to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I always ask, what religion are they?
Yes.
So I met a lady, and she had earrings on, and so I asked her. She said that I go to any church, but my mom's Adventist. And when I was at Southampton, I used to bring people to church. So she stays in Paget, and I'm down the country. So I was telling her about Warwick Church, and I tried to describe where it was, but she didn't get it. So I said, okay, I'll pick you up and I'll take you to church. So I picked her up yesterday, and she called me and she says, I have someone else, do you have room for another one? So I said, yes. So the girl was an Indian girl. So she got in the car, and she was just like grinning from ear to ear. She was like really excited. So got out and she told me, oh, thank you. I've been wanting to come to church for so long. So she's just come back, just come here from India. Her husband's not here. And she said her husband is Hindu. So she was just, I could just see she was just so excited to be in church. So then, when the pastor called, she started to cry. So I asked, did she want to go forward? So I went forward with her, plus the other lady, that was there. So, I'm saying like, wow, it's so different. It's so much work for us to do. So she's like really, really praying for her husband. But the point that I wanted to make is that she was sitting down, and then she folded her legs, like she brought both of her legs under her to sit in the chair.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So I looked, but and I try my best. I do not judge, but there was nothing wrong with it because it was different.
Yeah.
But she was still covered.
Yeah.
And I looked, and with her legs being bent, it was still at the same level as my knees that were like this. But that was like a different culture.
Yeah.
So that's a different
There you go.
method.
Yeah.
Method
There
of,
you go. Exactly. That's a different method. And that's what cultures will do.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you just shared, I even think we need to start back in our church, because this whole concept of principle and application has been an issue from
For a long
generations
time.
and generations.
Yeah.
And if people could understand the personal relationship with God is
Yeah.
critical,
Uh-huh.
they'll be free from all the legalism and confusion, because it's truly, this is enlightening. And people have been damaged as a result of feeling and being judged because of the outward external behavior.
Yeah.
And if we understood the principles of Christ, we will be free to worship Him as needed to ensure that mission and the message is first within our own experience, and
Yeah.
then we can pass it on to others without having all these limitations and
Yeah.
feeling boxed in.
Yeah.
And I think when I look at my generation, the majority were taught by the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're not free to
Yeah.
experience what God has abundantly
Mm.
provided for us, and understanding that it's not about us.
Mhm.
It's not about your actions and the behavior and the externals, and it's truly about the heart matters.
Yeah.
So this needs to be taught with
Yeah.
not even just cross-cultural, but within our own
Yeah.
culture of
Mm.
the church.
We can get all
and
the
we'll be
questions
free.
out.
And that is cross culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you
Yeah.
have
But I mean
subcultures.
with regards to
Yeah.
So the questions
The
can be
ethnic-
clarified.
Exactly.
We have a
That's
culture.
exactly. You're
Right,
correct.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I have two. We spoke about the meat. David, when Daniel and the three boys went in, they told them they didn't want that food.
That
The
food.
food, it wasn't
He
just
was
meat
offered.
that was offered to the idols. It was vegetables and oil. Everything was offered to the idols. Daniel said what they would eat, they would eat just plain vegetables. So they bought them separate food.
Right. That's right.
And so, the issue is not about, for me anyway, it's not about just being offered to idols. It was vegetables and meat offered to idols.
Uh-huh.
And the vegetables that, from what my understanding is that Daniel and the three Hebrew brothers, they bought their own, and they saw the difference between Daniel and the three Hebrew brothers than the others, right? They saw how more that they were much
Wiser.
brighter, the
Yep.
skin was clear
Yep.
and everything.
That's right.
But also, the one that we were just finished talking about,
But this one here that you just talked about, this is a case of cross culture, that the conflict was in a substantive teaching of truth about diet. And Daniel and his friends knew that what they were being asked to eat was unfit. And this is no compromise here. Right? They are not going to eat that food. They're just not going to do it. Right? So here now, it drilled down a little further. Sometimes it's not simply a question of a different cultural way of thinking. It's a violation of biblical truth. And when that happens, there is nothing that we can be accepting. We're not talking about just blending in to compromise to win everyone. No, because truth cannot be compromised. All right? The truth is truth, and it's going to stand. But he did it in a way that he was able to communicate by practicing what God had asked him to do. That brought about greater glory to God. Yeah. So
Also,
yeah, that was an honor.
Also about the jewelry, it comes back to me when I think about jewelry, how when they were building the temple, they would ask Moses to bring all the jewelry and
Yeah.
everything, and when it was too much for them,
Yeah.
what did he do with it? He buried it under the tree.
Mm.
So that means that they didn't need it, although they had too much. God told them to stop.
Okay, this is when we're talking about building.
Right.
Right.
Right. When they told them to bring all the jewelry,
Uh-huh.
and when they had enough jewelry,
Yeah.
that they had too much,
Yeah.
Moses took the rest and he buried it, told the guys to bury it under the tree. So they didn't need the rest of it, did they?
No, I think you're combining two messages. I know there was the burial of jewelry in Genesis 35.
Right.
And here is now where they were recommitting their life to Christ, and they're on a new spiritual path, and that dress was associated with the old path, and he buried it.
Right.
Okay? But now when they were building the sanctuary, he told them, bring all what you got. So whatever is clothing and whatever value that was used for the building of the church. Right? So I would have to research again to see if there was any burial at that point. I know he told them, I have enough. I have enough, right? Okay? So we know that they had jewelry, they had things of value, and it was for a purpose. Because God knew that there would come a time that those jewels will translate into value and physical things that were being built for the temple, and even monetary things for their livelihood. So there was a function for it. But it was not to decorate themselves, except even the dress of the priests. Very decorative. Yeah? And there were some jewels associated with that. But then it was a functional kind of jewelry. Okay? I think we need to move on. Yeah? Let's just move on to another level. But we have entered already where we are for tonight, today. Let's put two things here.
Understand.
Okay? What are those words?
Understand.
All right? And those are the two words that govern this course. First part of the course is understanding culture and all that is entailed in what makes one group and person different from another, and the implications of all of that. Understanding. And all we've been talking about for the bulk of last week and even this morning is just understanding. Understanding these differences, understanding the similarities and the implications of them, right? But then ultimately to apply them. Because we're talking about cross-cultural evangelism. And evangelism is an active sharing of the good news of salvation, right? And our particular message. So when we get to application, we're into which of the three? Message, mission, or method? We're into method, all right? Right? So they have to be applied. All of this head knowledge is good, but you've got to hit the road. Okay? You say, oh yeah, I like this. And as soon as somebody comes and dresses in a way that you don't approve of, you're back to your old way of thinking.
Your hair stands up.
Yeah. So that's where it shows whether or not this knowledge is going in the right way. Right? Because it has to transform our thinking, which transforms our behavior. Yeah? And so actions now demonstrate how much we value the insights of cross-cultural understanding. All right? Okay, I'd like for someone to help us out now. And this is like a review.
Because we have cross-culture that comes to church every now and then. We have this is coming from other places.
That's right. You always, constantly. Right? And then, so it's the different ethnic groups that are coming all the time. And sometimes we don't even see the difference. All we see is another person, and we feed through our own way of thinking that they are thinking like we are thinking, behaving like we are behaving, and we're expecting them to conform. Yeah? But the fact is that you see these differences, and accept the fact that they bring a package with them. Right? And so when they begin to behave in ways that are different from you, it's not necessarily a right or wrong. It's just different. Right? Yeah.
Let me tell you a joke. When I'm at church, I make my lot of praise to the Lord, right? Singing, right?
Yeah.
New cameras, right? Somebody said next to me, not like way I praise God, that's the Lord. That's just my personality, my life.
Yeah.
That's my culture.
Right.
I'm come from Pentecostal all my life.
Yeah.
So I've not been quiet, never been in my life. So they even move sometimes. Somebody came up and told me. Somebody said, what happened? Somebody came to me. Somebody said, you could have told me so. But see, that's who I am.
Yeah. That's it. So if this course is helping us to be a little more sensitive and accommodative and understanding of people, so that we can be more loving and caring and say things in words and in turns and in behavior and in response to others that would make them feel accepted and welcomed and loved, even when they're different, then this course would have fulfilled a purpose. Right? Understanding is the best thing in the world, isn't it? Yeah? Understanding. Because it can reduce unnecessary conflicts and fighting. Right? And because there's anxieties, there's tensions, there's emotions that are just warring within us when we are faced with difference. Right? May not necessarily be warranted. You see? And so we have to process, why am I feeling this way? right? Some legitimate feelings associated with cross-cultural movement, right?
Yeah.
But how we process it and relate to it
Yeah.
can determine the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a person that is always, they just run. They won't let you get energy and run. They won't let you say nothing, run.
Right,
They won't
right,
let you
right.
say nothing, run.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was with this girl yesterday like that, and she wouldn't. She said something about the law, and I said, well, do you understand the difference in God's Ten Commandment law and the ceremonial law? She said, it don't matter, and she just went, and I said, I just have to listen, and I'm listening, and I'm saying, and something she said, I said, okay, I got that, and she just run on. So how do you get in there with people like that?
Well, maybe it's a good place to start is your purpose. What is your purpose? Well, whatever you choose.
I just dropped by to say, she was on the
Yeah.
other side, and I just stopped to say hello, because
Okay.
we always have a word.
And so if you're just there to say hello, then you have no problem.
Yeah.
Because you can say hello, it doesn't matter. Come, keep on talking.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm only here to say hello.
I listen to what she had to
Yeah.
say,
See, there's no anxiety, there's no emotions, because all I wanted to say is hello. I said it, so you can take the floor.
The question I want to get to is that some things she was saying that I disagreed with, and I wanted to.
Are you telling me you had a different purpose now? Your purpose was not to say hello.
I understood what she was saying.
Okay.
And she understands
Uh-huh.
right and the difference of what she
It
was
sounded like
saying.
you had
But
another
she did
purpose,
not-
and
she did not give me the opportunity to
your
answer
purpose,
your question.
your purpose was to get her straight. That was your purpose.
So my question
Yeah.
was to find out if she knew what she was saying was correct or not. I just
Uh-huh.
wanted to know.
So your
You know,
purpose was to get her straight.
No, I don't deal with people like that.
Hey?
I just wanted to know if she understood what she
Okay,
was saying. 'Cause she was
so your purpose
contradicting
was to
herself in some
educate her.
things, and I just wanted
Yeah?
to straighten her out and just make sure that she understood
Okay.
the difference.
So your
I
purpose.
just wanted to understand the difference of what those two things she was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
So you
sometimes
wanted
you have
clarification. Your
something,
purpose is to have personal clarification.
Yes, because what
Now-
I found out is that a lot of people don't understand the difference between
Yeah.
ceremonial law and
Now you have another purpose. Your purpose was to teach her now. You want to teach her the truth. Right.
So to me, seriously, how do you do it?
You begin by settling your purpose. That's where you must start. If the purpose was to say hello, there is no issue.
No.
There is no issue, right? If your purpose is to help her to understand, so you're trying to teach her, you know? If your purpose is to get her straight, right? When you determine your purpose, that dictates your movement. Okay? If my purpose is just to win a friend, you see how different that would be? If I just want a friendship, that's different from if my purpose was to convert her to my way of thinking. Right? And I want to correct her erroneous thoughts. I want to make sure she gets herself clear before I leave her today. And I just can't stand to know that she is misconstrued, she is misunderstood, and she is in error. She needs to know the truth, and I'm going to give it to her before we leave her today. Yeah, right. But now, Mom, my point.
What happened was she wants us to get together and open up this little school and children funded so we can teach them about the Bible. But if she's going to be the person that don't want to hear anything,
right, it's not going to work out.
It's not going to work out.
Okay, now I've been belabeling this approach for a reason, right? Because it's really important for us to settle our purpose.
Yeah.
And when we're in any relation with anyone, what is your purpose?
Yeah.
Right? Because when your purpose is not being satisfied, that's when those emotions turn. Right? The anxiety, the hostility, and the kind of reaction, all of those come up because the purpose that you had is not being satisfied. There's some distance going on here, and you are creating some trouble for me. If you keep it up, I'm going to punch you on. You know? You're really getting under my skin. So your purpose is your self-preservation. Right? And if your purpose is to preserve yourself at any cost, and you are coming at me that is threatening me, then I will be defensive. Right? But I'm going to act in a way that is less than Christian. So if my purpose is simply to have a friend, to build a friendship, you could actually disagree with me and I can still be your friend, you know.
Yes, yes.
And I don't even need all the time to point out your difference. I may suggest, I don't quite see it like that, but that's another day we can talk about that. But I really like the fact that you do have an opinion. And I can see you're very passionate about that. Yeah, take it a little further.
Yeah.
Why do you think that way? I could stay on your page because my interest is a relationship.
Yes.
And my purpose is just to get to know you better,
Right.
understand you better, know why you think the way you think, what's really driving your action.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't even gotten on the page yet. So I can get on the page next week. And if you want me to get on next month, that's fine too.
Right.
Because all I'm interested in is a relationship
Right.
that is respectful.
Right.
I'm not going to allow you to abuse me, however. Right? I do have boundaries.
Right.
Yeah, and if you go too far, I'm going to say, please, no. If it goes that far, then we're really going to have to call this conversation off because we really are not helping each other.
Yeah.
Right? But so know your purpose.
Yeah.
Your purpose drives your action. And depending on the purpose, then you can determine how far you move in delivering a message
Yes.
and what method will be most appropriate.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Settle your goal.
Yeah.
Settle your goal and save your heart. Yeah.
You have a
your friend.
skill that is, I mean, you make it seem.
Oh my.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that is across all boundaries.
Yeah.
This is the whole
That
idea
is
why we
straight
should have more classes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
explaining things.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people are, like this girl, she says she don't read the Bible, but then she says she does read the Bible.
Yeah.
She don't quote the Bible, then she does quote the Bible.
Yeah.
And then she says, well, I come to my own conclusion and things.
Yeah.
And that's why when
She's not open. She's not ready.
Yeah, so.
She's not ready.
Yeah.
And so if you force yourself into that, you got tension.
Yeah, that's why you-
She will be defensive.
Right.
Every move you make.
Yeah.
Because
That's
she's
why
not
I just
open
say- I
for that
listen,
kind
I
of
listen,
dialogue.
And I listen.
She's
And
not
I
ready
say
to
what
listen.
She's not ready for that.
I can see what
And
she's
that's
saying.
okay. If you're not
Yeah.
ready, I can still be your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
And I
talk.
love it, and I love it to death.
Yeah, that's it. Then keep on loving her.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to win every argument. We do not have to win an argument. Sometimes we only need to win a friend.
Yeah.
Right? And with cross-cultural evangelism, we need to focus more on winning friendship.
Yeah.
Right? Love before correction.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? We have to care for people
Yeah.
before correcting them.
Right. It's like when Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah.
came to the
Also, she said she couldn't get a word in.
Uh-huh.
So at that time, she's not ready to listen to her.
She's
or
not ready.
anybody
No,
else.
she's not.
ready.
She needs to tell, okay, well, we'll talk about this another
Yeah.
time. When she's ready, then you
That's
talk
it.
about
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay?
I
Yeah.
look at, when my husband and I argue,
Uh-huh.
I let him run his mouth for
Yeah.
The Lord told me one
Sometimes
day
you just
to
gotta
shut
look
my
quiet.
Yeah.
mouth, and I shut my
Yeah.
mouth, and I
Yeah.
said, "Here
I-
I am."
understand it.
Yep.
And then I came
apply
back
now.
a few days later
Uh-huh.
and said, hey, you know what we were discussing the other day? And now I knew he was ready to listen. And you get your point across.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's the same thing.
Yeah.
She's not ready to listen.
Right. Because I had Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door, Pastor Gibbons, and they were
I'm ready
talking
to
I had a
to me
blue.
about the blood issues.
I thought I had a blue pen
And
somewhere.
When I
I don't know
came
where I
up
put
with the thing about, everything has life in it.
Right.
You ready?
Nothing
Oh, yeah.
exists without blood.
Yeah.
So I said to Mom, but a lot of people have died for nothing. That's committing suicide, I said, but when God talks about eating blood, He's not talking about us eating blood because we don't eat humans.
Yeah.
He's talking about when you find blood in the meat because that's where the germs
Yeah.
are and everything.
There we
He
go.
says when you cook your food, cook
Yeah.
it well. Cook
Right.
it
There you
well,
go.
leave no
There you
blood
go.
in it. I said, but you gotta
Yeah.
get that understanding and go back to
There
Deuteronomy
you go.
and reread it.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Okay, let's go here to our diagram.
What do you say about blood? What do you say about blood?
Yeah.
Why we shouldn't eat blood?
Oh, that's
Blood is
Life is in the blood. Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah? Okay.
Life is in the blood. That's
Right. I would like for you, someone who would volunteer. There's a review now. Right? I've begun the diagram,
Yeah.
and I want someone to come and explain this here. This is the world. That's W.
Yes.
This is the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
I want someone to come and explain, make the connections here. Tell me, what does this have to do with cross-cultural evangelism? Okay, we'll come, and you can draw something, but I want you to teach the rest of the class. Tell me the story. This is a story. This is the beginning of a symbol completed. You may have some drawings there, and I want you to tell me, what does that have to do with cross-cultural evangelism?
Can we do it simple? Like it doesn't have to be
No. Okay, guess you, Angela, please.
It's gonna be real simple.
Yeah, please.
From last week,
Yeah.
I remember, this is just from memory, I remember that bridge. So Eden, right here, was a perfect place,
Yes.
a perfect beginning. And as you see it encircled, it was set aside, was just the ideal. But the world in which we live in has become tainted. But God has created this Eden as the blueprint, and it is up for us as missionaries to bridge the gap between Eden and the world. And
Yeah.
so that's my concept of that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add to it?
I
Cross-cultural evangelism from the perspective of Eden. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Angela. Yeah.
I was looking at Eden. The world is very large. And I was looking at the beginning of the world, which is very small here in Eden. And as the sin took over the world Eden began to expand. God took Eden to heaven, but Eden is still here in the world. And we need to expand Eden all over the world as missionaries.
Hallelujah. Okay. One more.
Okay.
One more. Here's the story of
Okay.
Eden and the world and
Okay.
cross-cultural
Let me
evangelism.
see if I get this right. Okay, Eden is a beautiful place. It has no sin. No sin at all. God only had Adam there. Adam was in charge of all that was around him. The animals, the birds, the fish, the sea, everything, the trees. He was to keep this Eden clean and pure in purity. He was to make sure that he obeyed God in everything that was around him. So then God realized Adam was lonely. He put him to sleep. He made Eve. Eve became his helpmeet, as we are in today's world, as a husband and wife. You are the helpmeet. So now, because God made Eve a helpmeet for Adam, Adam became a farmer. He was dealing with the yard and all around him and everything. And Eve was free to just roam and take in all the beauty. But Satan up in heaven came down and he landed on the tree that God had provided for him. I'm going the long way around. Two trees. Two trees put in the Garden of Eden, and one was for the good and evil, and one was for them to eat of all the fruit that they wanted so they could live in a nice natural life and have all the fruit and food that they needed, plus the herbs of the grass and all that. So now, I'm going all the way around. But anyhow, Satan came down, he landed on the tree. Eve came over, she saw this beautiful fruit. She wanted to know what this fruit was. She did not understand that this one she can't touch, this one she can't touch.
Right.
So now, but she's looking at it. She's looking at it. But Satan drops down and he says, oh, but did God say you can't touch this tree?
Yes.
He says, but God knows that if you touch this tree, you shall know good and evil. And stupid Eve goes and takes the fruit.
Well, look at you.
Okay? But
Now give us the
then
fast forward version.
Fast forward.
she takes the fruit, she walks all the way over to her husband, who is tempting God, and she says, look what I have. I have a fruit. Take a bite. He takes a bite. Then everything goes corrupt into the world from that point on.
Okay.
And we become sinners.
Okay.
Because now we know right from wrong.
Yeah.
And we choose to make right from wrong. And
Yeah.
so therefore now we have our own choice to say, well, it doesn't matter. I can eat this food. Oh, I can go to that club. I could do this. I could do that. But now, because we now have lost this bridge here
Okay.
in the cultural differences in our world,
Okay.
now we have conflict, we have arguments, we have misunderstandings.
Sin.
So now we've got to take this bridge from good and redirect it back all the way around to the
Hallelujah.
world so that we can connect again with this bridge
Yeah.
and get it sorted out.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you. Excellent. All right. So we want to bring it home now because you keep talking about this bridge. So let's bring the bridge where it belongs. Yeah. Here we have it.
Yep.
Okay.
The bridge can't cross from one to the other.
Yeah.
Yep. You gotta get a course.
Yeah.
It's called neighbors.
Okay, someone else who hasn't been up yet, I want you to complete the story.
Cassie. There we go.
All right?
All right.
Who would explain that? Someone explain that in light of cross-cultural evangelism and explain all the symbols that are there.
These are people from different cultures,
Okay.
realizing that there is a bridge between both. People are different, and that Christ is the bridge. And it doesn't just go one way. It's not just us to them. It's them to us. So sometimes we get caught up with what we have to say and what we're going to pass on to people. But we also have to be cognizant of what they're thinking, and how what their culture is, and listen to them. So the bridge goes both ways, and also to use the other person as a compliment. It can be a compliment. So to be a compliment to each other.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, anything left out? Anyone need to add to it just to complete Millard?
It's not a matter of going, either of them going all the way over to the other side.
Uh-huh.
You need to meet.
Uh-huh.
To meet in the middle too.
Okay. Beautiful. Complementary. Two-way street. All right.
Our neighbors.
Yeah.
We are neighbors.
Okay.
We can be neighbors.
I love it. We're continuing the review, and the question is, define culture. Give me a very simple definition of culture.
Different personality and dress and language. That's what culture is. A
Okay.
difference in language, personality, and dress.
It's
All
a
right.
different code.
Different code. What about just a different way of life? Different way of life. Okay? It's a total sum of all what makes life different from between one group and another. Right? And there's factors include, let's list them. What are the things included in that sum total of differences? Food, dress, language, money, yeah. What's that? Economics, that's right, yeah.
Even
Household, traditions, right? Religion, music, right? So the sum total of those things that have repeated themselves over time and have become normative for a given group that is different from another group. Language. All right? So we said that. Okay, we talked about some different terms. I would like for someone to give me the gist of the terms that I mentioned. Ethnocentricity. Ethnocentricity.
Thinking that your
Ethnocentricity.
group is the ultimate.
Superior. That your nationality is superior to another. Ethnocentricity. Racism is believing that your race is superior to another. Okay? So ethno is dealing with your ethnic origin. And centrality is dealing with what is so important to you. What is at the heart of it. Okay? So the belief that one is better than, more important than, has greater value than another leads to that thinking. And that thinking leads to conflict. Okay? Because you're going to act out of the way you think. Right? Another, prejudice. What's that? What is prejudice? And by the way, these are all spelled out in your notes. You know that, right? Okay? What is prejudice?
You don't like a group of people, or you don't like.
Yes.
Okay, so
just
prejudice.
because of where they come from.
Prejudice has to do with a group.
Yeah.
Okay, and the very fact that you belong to one group and I belong to another, there is an aversion.
Yeah.
There is a hostility that I have toward the other. Right? And so it's totally irrational, but yet we allow that thinking and behavior to create conflict. Right? So we're looking at danger signs to positive harmony and relationships among humans. And so we want to be mindful of what they are so that we don't go there. Right? And we don't say, because you are of that group, I immediately say, I don't want any part of you. You know, sometimes you have an aversion toward in a group, and you really don't have anything really wrong and bad about the person. But because you don't want people to think that you're associated with them. You right? That when they are around, you act one way. If no one's around, hey, we got great, everything is fine. And you know what in the Bible who acted like that? Peter. And Paul rebuked him. He says, listen, you acted okay before around us as Gentiles. As soon as your Jewish boys came, you started acting like what's this? What's this all about? And Paul called him out. He called him out. Right? So prejudice is this aversion, hostility toward a group simply because they are not of the group that you are part of.
So
Right?
Would you say church? Would you say church people in general, all churches are prejudiced?
Yes, that's a very good point. There is a potential for churches to be prejudiced against another church because you don't belong to my group.
Right.
Yeah? So we have to learn to live in harmony even when we are of different churches.
Yes.
Think about it. People who believe in Jesus and have accepted Him as Lord and Savior and love Him to the death. Yet because they are not a 7-day or they are not Pentecostal, depending on which group you're coming from, you act a certain way that is hostile and adverse.
So that means that we're not really showing love like we're supposed to.
That's correct. You are absolutely right. You are lacking the true principles of Christianity because prejudice is not a Christian principle. Right? In the sense. In its very pure sense of just acknowledging differences, that's fine. But now when you attribute value or detract value based on those differences, you have violated Christian principles. All right?
How about Peter?
Different sheep and different.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
Peter, those years that he was with Christ, and then when he came in, they took Jesus in to be questioned and all.
Yeah.
And he denied him.
Yeah.
Would you call that prejudice?
He was more scared than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we do that. We are prejudiced because we're scared, because we don't want to upset the other person.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what would be a better word.
I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, prejudice. Yeah. Suddenly denying. And it is a prejudice. You're denying your association with him, right? Because his reputation in the eyes of those who are important to you now is not in your favor. So you want to disassociate from his group. So I don't even want to be seen to be a Christian. So yeah, I am prejudiced now toward the very group that I thought and I said I'm a part of, but now is not looking favorable. Right? And I don't like this feeling that I had. I don't like the reaction.
Negative reaction.
Right. So now I'm saying, no, I don't belong to your group. Who are you? No. Yeah, so yes. Yeah, that comes into play there. Another word, stereotype. Who has that?
Exaggerated belief about a group of people.
Based on?
Labeling.
Based on?
Negative behavior.
What's that? Generalization. Okay? So you're basing it on one or a few of those groups who have a characteristic behavior that you are saying because they have it, everybody in your group has it. Right? So you're making a very false judgment call. Yeah? Because everybody doesn't do it that way. Yeah? And so when you make general statements that all Bermudians are, right? All black people are, all white people are. You see, when we make those kind of statements, then we have really become stereotypical, right? And stereotypes create conflict, right? Because they are not true. They really are not true. And it's not fair to make statements that are not true. And labeling someone.
You don't know anything about it.
No, you made a label based on what you think you know. And because you think you know that something is true and you are not happy about it, you say everybody who looks like you or is your color, they behave that way too. So now I come and meet now Millard. First time I've seen him, but as soon as his behavior reminds me, of Sandy, I just shout on, I don't want to be with you, man. Who are you? Because I have a negative association that I have made this stereotypical conclusion, right? Stereotypes, not good, not good. Okay? And then anxiety. Anxiety happens within us. Right? We become tense. We become, why? What prompts that? Differences. That's all it is. Your behavior is not the way that I like. Right? Something about you. As soon as I look at you, I just hate you too. I never met you, but I just hate you. Right? Because something about you triggered something within me. And I have allowed it to play out in my emotions that are adverse. Yeah. Yeah, it's just not right.
Sometimes we label people on what other people have told us.
Oh, yeah, we did. We haven't checked. Got to check your assumptions. Right? It's not good for us to be able to draw conclusions because something looks like. Right? It may look like it, but it might not be it. Right? Maybe your person just had a bad day. It's not that they're angry at you. They're angry with themselves. Something went wrong. Right? So don't draw conclusion based on behavior. Check the behavior. Check it. Right?
So what you say, Pastor, that we are not really, say, studying the word or applying the word, say the fruits of the Spirit and stuff like that.
Right.
That will make things much easier.
Yes.
If we apply certain principles.
Yes.
To make our behaviors a little better.
Of course, that's it. And that's why the closer we get to Christ, the more we become like Him.
Yeah.
Right? So we were more inclined to react to situations that may seem to be, they may be undesirable. Right? But before I respond in a like manner that is negative, the grace of God colors my behavior. And I say, okay, let me take a deep breath. No, there's nothing that should make me feel all this anxiety. Nothing's happened differently except what's going on in my mind. So I can change this. I don't need to feel this way. Right? Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Right? Don't go there. Right? So I can actually control those negative behaviors within me and not allow them to display themselves in conflict that becomes problematic. Right? And now you got somebody else all ruffled because of the way you acted. Now, it doesn't justify their behavior. Right? Because they haven't processed it either.
Right.
So you got two people just off the chain. And now you got real fireworks. Yeah? And in the end, the hatred ends up where? Where does this unchecked evil emotions end?
It does. It trickles down.
Yeah? Yeah. When you have these unchecked, uncontrolled evil emotions, what do they translate into? Behavior. What else? What kind of behavior? Negative. Yeah. Hatred. And then if you hate someone, then what are you going to? Anger. Yep. And what's come next? Death. Eventually, right? So then it's going to be verbal, it's going to be physical, and then it's going to be death. Right? That's where they're going. That's all headed down the road of death. And they are not Christian. So how can Christians go from 1 to 0 to 100 in 2 seconds? Because you said something wrong to them. Yeah? So we need to bring those emotions under control of a higher power. Right? Okay, so here now are just some of those reminders there of what we talked about last week. Culture shock. What's that? Culture shock, what is that?
Yes, when you don't realize what's going on, and then you find out what's going on. I didn't know that was going on.
Okay. Any other way of expressing culture shock?
Not being able to adapt to different environments.
Uh-huh.
And the difference causes a reaction.
Okay, yes. So when you are exposed to differences of culture, right, that impacts you, that impact is called shock, right? Because you are being introduced to a way of thinking, behaving, feeling that is not your norm. And immediate impact shocks you, right? Okay, and so it's normal, by the way. Yeah? It's normal to be shocked. It's normal to be shocked. But it's spiritual and it's wisdom in being able to work through the shock, to understand its normality and to know what am I going to do about it. So when we are going cross culture, be prepared for shock. Because it will happen. Right? Because you will be confronted with something that's different. Right? You may not know exactly what it is, but when it happens, oh, okay, I know what that is. It's culture shock. Right? Right? And so now there is the shock stage, and then what's the next stage?
Reversing.
Yeah? You're talking about phases now. You are a cross-cultural missionary, and you're saying, listen, I'm here, and I didn't expect this. I thought I'd just come and change the world. Everyone's just going to accept what I have, and we're going to go home to glory together. And it's not working out that way.
Conformity, adaptation.
Okay, there is some conformity. There's some adaptation. Yeah, yeah. Other things that happen along the way.
Sometimes you might get Afro-centrism.
Yeah.
Yours and your culture's better.
Okay, yeah.
Your culture is a shock. This is not the way.
Right. So you can process it now. You're negotiating. You're asking yourself, is this really right? No, I do it this way. You say there's a negotiating part where you're actually saying, okay, and maybe I'm going to find a new space. I'm going to bring where I'm coming from. I'm going to bring where they are coming. Okay, I think we can find a little space here to work. Yeah, we're going to compromise this. This is going to be a compromise.
Well, let's work together.
Yeah, let's work together. Right?
Adjust.
And then you're going to adjust.
That's the honeymoon.
A honeymoon. Yeah. Right, so that honeymoon, oh, it was so well. I never knew marriage was so sweet. But then again, for us, this honeymoon don't stay forever, does it? It doesn't, right?
I'm still honeymooning.
Thank God for the honeymoon stage. But then the honeymoon stage, doors pass on, and then we have to find ourselves negotiating. Negotiating and then making some compromises. Listen, I'm here now, so I cannot expect that every time I go and turn the tap, the water's going to run out. Right? No, it may not come out. As a matter of fact, it may not come out hot. It may be and maybe I need to catch some extra water in a bucket so that next time when I try to flush and nothing happens, then I can help myself. You see? So now I'm negotiating. I'm making some adjustments to be able to live in this cross-cultural setting so that I can carry out my mission in delivering the
Message.
in the best that is possible to affect the mission. All right? Okay, what else can we say? We can say that missions, 1040 window. What does that term mean to you?
It may be people in Asian countries and so on that we haven't reached them as yet.
Okay?
And we need to sometimes give the offerings and give a lot of
Okay.
stuff to them.
All right, so we talked about Asian. Is it only Asian?
No, the Indian countries as well. Some of the
Okay, so that's part of the Asian, and then is North Africa. Okay, so North Africa and most of Asia. A 10 degree, 40 degree of the equator territory. But in that one section, small section of the globe, we find about 2/3 of the world's population, and the majority of them have never heard about Jesus. Yeah? So you're talking about people, and what are some of the religious groups there? Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, right? What's that? Not necessarily, because Catholics are Christian.
Atheists.
Right? Yeah, atheists, right. So you're talking about a saturated area within the world of people who do not have exposure to Christianity in general. And Christianity is outlawed in most of the places.
Right.
And to reach them, traditional methods will not work. And so the challenge is, how do we reach the world when this sector of the world is unreachable, it would appear. Okay, so that's the challenge.
That's what I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
earlier at the beginning, that the TV, they said the TV is wrong, that the computers are wrong, but those right now are the only thing that's getting into the 40.
Interesting, yeah. So now we're talking methodology. And one of the methods is beaming it in, right, through radio and television. Another method yes, and another method we talked about is when people from those areas, hello everyone, welcome. Yeah, when they leave their country and they come to ours, right? That becomes a great opportunity to witness to them.
There's a lot of transfer and they go on holiday.
That's right.
That's when they come to.
And like the Ethiopian, they go back now with this good news. Yes, right? And take this good news with them, right? So methodology now becomes important for fulfilling mission in that area of the world. So outside of that, people know about Christianity, and there's methods that we adopt that is effective. And we might change. What about public evangelism in Bermuda and the Big Tent?
We don't do that anymore.
We don't do that anymore. Why not? Different method. That's the simple answer. It's not a right or wrong. Some people make it right and wrong. Right? But it's what has been determined, whether right or wrong, to be less effective. Right? Because of its use in the past and the response in the present, the suggestion is, no, that's not how most people are going to respond to the gospel today. So, increase of education, increase of other forms of technology and communication. In those days, when it was big, did we have the internet? No, we didn't. Did we have texting? No, we didn't. So things have changed. Communication has changed. And so why not change methodology? Why not find ways that can be most effective in a given time, because culture has evolved. Are you with us here? Right? So we're dealing with mission, and we're saying a great challenge to mission for the world sense is the 1040 window. Specialized approaches are being offered. And what are we doing as a Seventh-day Adventist church to address the challenge of the 1040 window? Global missions. And global missions have now shifted. Okay? Whereas our focus, even when I was a missionary, the focus was still traditional. Most of our missionaries were sent to areas where the work has already been started, where there's already a knowledge of Christianity, and we evangelize people in more of acceptable context, right? And we continue that methodology, but the greatest dollar in our missions now is being channeled into reaching the 1040 window.
I remember years ago they had books out on 1040, because I have a couple
Yeah.
of books out on 1040, how to reach you and everything.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like it just died off.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and so where is it now? I think I talked about here. Understanding world religions, okay, and contemporary cultures. This was produced by the director. He was the director at the time of World Missions, okay. And when we think about the 5, 6 pockets that we have established in that network from a general conference standpoint, in different strategic points within the world, and each point has its own focus. One group dealing with Muslims, you know, right? Another probably dealing with the Jews and others. So they have the different pockets with a different focus. And what this DVD series does is just introduces the different spots, different established points that the church has for mission to the 1040 window, right? Through the eyes of these particular cultures. So it's more of a long-term approach, more of a development approach, it's a softer approach, and it's one that requires expertise. But yet we cannot limit it to that methodology, because now you're talking about a long-term plan, and you're talking about specialized personnel, right? And then when these people come to us, that becomes another context that we can actually influence them, reach them, and they take it back to where they are going. All right? So multiple methods, and God is with us to help to facilitate all of those. We also talked last week about world missions and the world mission movement, Christian missions, as we unfolded. All right? And there are times that the church really was not very effective in carrying out its mission, or it carried its mission out in a false, with a false precept. Okay? What do you recall about that dialogue? Yeah? We talk about now the church post-biblical times, throughout the history of Christianity, the ebb and flow of spirituality within the church and its methodology for advancing mission. What do you remember? We just began the conversation, but what can you recall? Do you recall any times that the church worked closely with the state? Church and state. Was there ever a time in the history of the Christianity that it, during the time of Constantine, right? That, and who was Constantine?
He was the
emperor. Okay? And what did he do that was significant for Christianity?
He actually he made a shift to Christianity, but
Uh-huh.
also he maintained some of the paganism so
Yes.
it could be acceptable.
Uh-huh.
So Sunday worship came into play.
Okay? Right. So he favored Christianity, but also was a pagan. He married the two because it was politically wise. And he was able to keep the empire because they had a large sect of pagans and a large sect of Christians. So Christianity started off insignificant, but then it became a significant force within the empire. All right? And they reached a point also that Christianity became a state church.
Right.
Who was the head of the church of Christianity when that happened? Yeah, when you talk about Christianity, because Christianity has many branches. The papacy, right? So the Bishop of Rome, he was designated by the Emperor Justinian to be the head of the Christian church. So they looked to the church and the leadership of Rome for Christianity to speak, right? Eventually, the power of the church became even more powerful than the state. So kings would tremble when they went outside of harmony with the power of the church. Okay, what danger did you see with the church having so much political power?
Legislation of morality.
Legislation of morality, legislation of religious dogma. Okay? And when the church with the state dictates religion, what does that produce for the masses?
Chaos.
Persecution. Why?
Because
You're compelled to give up your conscience.
And are you going to do that?
No.
No. Okay? Conscience cannot be legislated. Now, some people may submit because they have a weak conscience or they have a weak loyalty to a spiritual value. And so they're fine with going along with the state and its religious requirements. But conscientious Christian believers and other people of faith are not going to give up their conscience because you said it's a law. No, don't work like that.
they're trying to
Okay?
they're trying to do that now.
Exactly.
Combine state and
And that's why we say church and state, in unity of church and state, there's danger.
That's right.
Okay? We're not talking about being disrespectful to state, but we're talking about sleeping with state. Yeah. When you now allow the state to control the way you practice religion,
The way you think.
the way you think. No, God is the one to whom we must give an account. Okay? So conscience must be preserved. Individual must make up our decision how we will live. Okay? So it's not a state. It's not a law. It's not a movement. It's God and God alone. Right? That dictates how I must live and ultimately choose my destiny. Right? So when the church united with the state, the church became a persecuting power. So Christians persecuted Christians, and millions lost their lives. Who was in the leadership? Obviously, ultimately, Satan was in it, and you're absolutely right. But who did he work with through a human institution? And persecution. And which church was that? Okay, so there was a dark space in history where the Church of Rome was the perpetrator of persecuting Christians. Okay, so there was martyrdom in the name of God, and the church thought it was doing God's will. Right? In reality, it was not, but it did fulfill prophecy. Okay, so we're looking at history now as the church finds itself actively engaged in mission, because the Church of Rome was engaged in mission too, and it believed its mission was God's mission. And there was the period of the Crusades. You know what the Crusades were? And that was not our evangelistic meetings either. Right? Okay? How did they advance Christianity during the Crusades? It was force. It was force, right? And so there was a lot of behavior that was unchristian in the name of Christ.
Right.
So we're talking about mission now.
Right. I was reading one of the books that one of the pastors put on. He was Adventist.
Yeah.
He was a Catholic, and he came to be an Adventist. And he wrote all of these books. And one book I was reading, what the Vatican does to their own people and outside that don't conform to them.
Right.
It's been about 20 odd years now.
Yeah.
And I put that book down because the things that they were doing was scary.
Yeah. Right. And this happens. This happens when we allow self to take priority over God's word. Right? And when traditions supersede the Bible. Right? And so those dangers are there for us to observe and to know that's not the way to go.
That's
Right? History is for a twofold reason. One, to avoid the bad, and the other to emulate the good. Okay? Anything bad, say, okay, I see that. No, I can change so it doesn't go that way again. The good, fine, let's carry this on. All right? So there's some positive things in missions also. And one of the positive things is that God never left his church. There's always been the faithful. Okay? And so in history, even during the persecution, you had groups who were faithful. Name some of them. The Waldenses, right? And name some who actually were martyred as a result of their faith. Luther. Okay, yeah, he certainly had opposition. But then you have those who were martyred. And you know anyone who was burned to the stake? Huss, right? And Jerome, right? And so you do have these examples of the faithful. As you now fast forward through history, you got now even in the 1400s, you have a group known as the Moravians, right? And then even in the 17th century, you have the Pietists in Germany, right? All of these come from a stream that said we must have a powerful spiritual relationship with God. And we must maintain the spirit of evangelistic mission to carry the good news of salvation. We must be true to the word, right? So this Pietist movement that filtered through the ages began to become forefront in its focus in the 18th century, right? And also in the 19th century. And so in the 1700s, you find people like Jonathan Edwards, you have Whitfield, you have others. And then in the 1800s, then you have another school of followers who are powerful in the preaching of the Word of God. And as in that context, you have Miller and others who are saying, listen, something great is happening. Jesus is about to come. We need to get back to revival. Right? And so this spirit of revival is what kept the church fresh and alive even during its difficult periods. And we have some notes there on the two groups. Here's a quotation that's in your notes. within 20 years of the commencement of their missionary work, talking about Frank and Zinzendorf, who were the greatest missionary leaders of the 18th century. Within 20 years of the commencement of their missionary work, the Moravian Brethren had started more missions than Anglicans and Protestants had started during the 2 preceding centuries. Their marvelous success was largely due to the fact that from the first, they recognized that the evangelization of the world was the most pressing of all the obligations that rested upon the Christian church, and that the carrying out of this obligation was the common affair of the community. And then you had pietists influenced the 18th century evangelical awakening in England, John Wesley and George Whitefield, and in America, Jonathan Edwards and Whitefield. Then we learn about the Great Awakening saved England from moral and religious disaster and paved the way for the modern missionary movement launched by William Carey, missionary to India, 1792 to 40. He was known as the father of the modern world mission. Okay? So you have the centuries of the mission movement, and now you have a time identified as modern mission movement, and we learn what really drove the mission spirit and the spirituality and the focus on practical Christianity really was at the heart of it. Okay, so let's see where we go from there. Well, you can read the other notes and capture one or two other things. We close with our focus on my mission experience, and we have an insert there on a more current mission experience that I'm involved in, and that's in Haiti. And I was there in March. I will return in August. There will be a few others who will go with me when we return in August, and we will build a home that was demolished during a recent earthquake. And it will be restored, among other projects. And in the evenings, I will be training in a program called Lights. Lights is to the world what Waves is to Bermuda Conference. Okay? And so that has begun there. We have 36 who completed the first course in March. And we will be going back with them to continue the program in August. And then in November, I'll return again. Okay? So this is mission. This is mission, and where my path is leading me. In January, December 31, I'll be officially retired. But I'll be retreaded. I will be moving into a new path. And Lights Ministry will be that platform, my primary platform of carrying this message to the world. Right? The training of evangelists, the multiplying of disciples of Christ. Lights. Training of lights evangelists so that more disciples are being made to carry this mission, the message to the world. Right? And that's what we are. We are evangelists in Bermuda. Right? But Lights is training evangelists all around the world. Okay, we're about to take a 10-minute break. Any questions or comments? All right, so we have just revisited that which we introduced last week, and to bring us up to date where we are. Again, hey?
You'll be retiring, you said?
Yes.
And you're taking up Lights?
Yes. I'll be moving into that in full time. Yeah, and further developing wherever the Lord leads me.
Right, so I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
So it could be worldwide.
Yeah.
So that means you don't continue here then?
I'm not in the employed work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless there's a special project of one kind or another, that we'll work, and I'm here and I'm available. All right. But my main ministry platform is Lights. Right. But I also have to generate an income. Yeah. So I have to find out what keeps me alive. Right. But in terms of what's driving my move, it's this Lights.
The Waves program,
Waves continue.
the assignments with.
Yeah, no Waves, because that will continue.
Right.
And also we are uploading these now, so that even those who are unable to be here, they will be able to download the courses.
Okay.
Right? And that's the purpose of our recording. Yeah, so the plan is that it continues
Right.
as it is, at a physical setting where we continue to come together, but then on an electronic platform, more of our members can take advantage of the Waves opportunities. Yeah? Okay, so that's where we are. Let's take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we'll still just talk about a couple of principles in terms of applying what we have discussed to actual evangelistic ministry and in building friendships across culture. All right, that's where we're going to spend the rest of our class. We finish at 1. All right, so we didn't have a lunch break. We're going to have a 10-minute break here, and then we'll come back and continue to 1. All right? Well, do enjoy your break.